What would you have said to Logan to prevent all of the beef from happening?
I feel like I want to use your platform to correct something that hurt his heart. And it was
rising to fame, hosting one of the biggest podcasts in the world before a massive blowout with his co-host Logan Paul, George Janko has gained millions of subscribers talking to people from Charlie Kirk and Andrew Tate to Jordan Peterson, now on his own channel, The George Janko Show.
You give me a lot to think about.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Raised by Assyrian parents in Phoenix, Arizona, people around him always knew George was special.
Everybody was like, yo, your kid is not going to amount to anything. He's F's in every single thing. And my mom and dad were both like, nah, the Lord has a plan for him.
While moving across the country, having beef with the whole world watching and making millions of dollars from creating content, one thing has always been consistent with George, his Christian faith.
Bro, I can't.
In this conversation, George opens up like never before.
You know, and that's what gives me hope about Logan, dude.
We talk God.
Heaven and hell are both full of people that believe they don't belong there.
Wow. Heaven and hell are both full of people that think they don't belong there.
Interview God one night. Come there with your hardest questions. What is actually Jesus? Who is this man?
Logan Paul.
He gave me the world. I would love to give him the kingdom of God. Was I fearing God or was I fearing Logan? I asked his mom, dad, and his brother, like, how do you guys feel about it? They said, nobody loved my son like you.
The new wave of Christian products sweeping the internet is kind of a new era of Christian capitalism.
Bryce and the Girls Gone Bible and Ruslan and Johnny Chang, they're truly preaching.
And we even discussed George's wedding.
Well, tell me more about you.
Oh! Yo, this guy's amazing. I lost so many friends and so many family members because of this.
This is a conversation you don't want to miss. We're speaking about supernatural encounters here, and you said I'll put this in a digestible way for people. Can we not do that now? Can we just speak about what George has encountered?
All right.
I saw you ask Alex Hormozy whether he'd choose all the power in the world or all the peace. His instinct took him towards power, and you unpacked that for your whole conversation. And I want to ask you a similar question. If you could choose all the peace in the world or all the fame and notoriety in the world, your name was written into the history books forever and studied by every single pupil. What does your instinct pull you towards there?
I think back in the day, I would have been really excited about that, like so pumped about that. I think I no longer focus my energy on that thought because just in 10 years, how much has changed, right? So like what I'm doing on this earth now, it could either be super hated or super loved. And so I think I started finding a little bit more success when my ego didn't go to like how they look at me, and it went from how the Lord looked at me. Because I think that his time is more valuable to work towards than what I think is good here. So I'm learning every day, and it's, as a creator, I think you would know, like you kind of hate yourself. Every time you grow, you're like, geez, Louise, man, like last year I was crazy, or I'm learning this now and I can't believe I thought this way before. So how I picture it is kind of, I'm borrowing wisdom from the Lord, and I'm trying to do as much as I can do with my talents on this earth. But when I meet him, I'm no longer concerned of how the world looks at me. And I'm trying to practice that kind of now.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, I've been really excited to speak to you because you've been on such a journey, and I look at faith a lot. I'm not a Christian, but I'm exploring, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm trying to work it out.
Yeah, amen.
You've been exposed to the Christian faith for a while, but you've alluded to it before that you kind of knew Christianity and you went to church 3 times a week, but you didn't meet Jesus.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So when I was younger, I had trouble making friends and stuff. So my mom taught me about Jesus at a young age, and I would talk to him as if he was like right next to me. And I would tell him about my dreams, and he would put these dreams in my heart. And so like a crazy man, I would ride my bike to the church next door, and I would just lay in the grass and I would just talk to him about people at my school and where I want to go in my life. And then when I came to Hollywood and I found my own success, even though it was given to me from him, I started weighing out what's right or wrong in my hands. And the first thing I prayed for when I came out here, I said, Lord, if this takes me an inch away from you, I want it miles away from me. And so when my career kind of came to a point where everything went down, I was like, oh, this is what I prayed for. So like, this is taking me away from how God sees me as a righteous man. And by the way, righteous in my eyes isn't like I do all the right things. I think righteous in my eyes is knowing that I can't do all the right things, but yet I trust something greater than me. And so I was in a place where I was a little low, and I said, I'm sorry to him like he's my dad. I was like, man, I got carried away and I forgot about you. So I always had him in my life. It's kind of like when you get in a relationship with somebody you love, you still love them, but you got so comfortable that you took advantage of their love. And it was on my first episode of Impulsive. I said, if this takes me an inch away, and I was reciting my prayer. And I just watched that the other day and I said, how good is my God that he puts me through circumstances that breaks me just to rebuild me in a place that he feels is good. And so like, when people ask me like your first question, the power, fame and stuff like that, I think those are fruits that come from his tree, but it's not something I should be focusing everything on. And a tree doesn't produce fruits for itself. It produces for others. So when I was consistently, bro, like the way I lived my life before was I thought I was God's gift to earth. It was so wild how I viewed myself. I used to walk around thinking that I was truly like, oh, I'm good because I don't do this and I'm good because of this. And when I went all the way back down, I like picked up my Bible, I laid back down alone and I was like, all right, like I felt ashamed. I felt like back in the day I had nothing and I was with him, and then I had everything, and then when I lost everything, it feels like that really bad movie where I lose everything, I come crawling back, but he still loved me. And I think it was kind of when I was where I was before, and I thought I was going to be the happiest I've ever been, but I kept remembering me working at Five Guys flipping a burger, and everybody used to be like, this kid's the happiest kid I've ever met in my life. And then now I'm learning the word depression and I'm learning the word anxiety, and it's weird to even come out of my lips. And so I asked God and I said, why is it that a boy flipping burgers is happier than a man who's accepted all of his dreams? And he, not audibly, but through meditation on his word, he kind of reminded me that the boy flipping burgers thought about greater things. And the one who is concerned about himself is just death. And so I kind of took a step back. I thought my career was done. And the Lord said, no, it's just the beginning. And I was like, oh, well, now I'm here more humbly than I was, that I wanted the glory to be on me.
I can tell. You've
Yeah.
got that Christian glow about you. And it's
Thank you,
so
man.
wonderful to witness in person. This is a little bit of a tough question to ask, and you don't have to answer it. But people all the time, they want the fruit, not necessarily the tree, right? They want the benefits of the Christian faith, but they don't want to actually act in accordance with it. Another thing that I've seen, especially in the entertainment space, we're here by Hollywood, in LA, everything's glamorous. I would go one step further from what you said, where you said, look, I kind of took advantage of Jesus's love and I therefore overstepped.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate, or do you think you actually went one step further at points in the entertainment industry and tried to almost become God and worship yourself over him?
Amen. That's, dude, insanely wise to see it from that point of view, because whatever you worship, you become. So if you don't worship God, you must kill it. So remember when he grabbed us from dirt and breathed into us, longer in that timeline when we became more self-driven, the first thing we wanted to do is kill God. So maybe we don't say it with our lips, but when I walk around with people with, by the way, the habits that I still have today, it's not like I'm walking around like the perfect. No, I still battle my ego and my pride and all of that. But it that's why in the gospel it says you have to kill yourself, because if you don't kill yourself, you're going to try to kill me. And I find it ironic that when Adam and Eve first sinned against God, they took from a tree, their deciding factor on what's good or bad. But then our God humbled himself, came back down, and then climbed back on a tree, and then we nailed him to where he should be. So there's only two men in God's eyes, the grateful and ungrateful. The grateful will be working for the Lord. The ungrateful will try to replace the Lord. So I always say this. This is my new saying that I've been telling myself. Heaven and hell are both full of people that believe they don't belong there. Hell, we don't belong here. Heaven, Lord, we do not belong here. I'd rather want to be the one in heaven in God's presence saying, I don't belong here. You want me here. That's where my heart is right now.
Wow. Heaven and hell are both full of people that think they don't belong there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the more I learn, the more a man's pride is his perspective. And so I just kept realizing through my life, I'd always be like, well, I don't deserve this. Or like, oh, Lord, I don't deserve this. So I was like, wow, Like, this is where it's going to end. It's like the phrase is going to come out of your mouth. And it's funny because in the gospel it says that every knee shall bow, willing or non-willing. My goal in life is just to do it willingly. That's where I'm trying to aim. And it's like every day I'm trying to kneel for myself and not the Lord. And so like, just got to practice it.
Well, I think that battle with pride is very difficult for a lot of young men, especially in the modern world where we're comparing ourselves to the top 0.1% that get shown to us on social media, and people like myself, who's a kid that's grown up in the UK watching you and Logan Paul on my iPad after school, I'm comparing myself to your lives, or at least the life that I see on camera. And I want to get into all of that and battles with pride. But can you take me back here? If we look at kind of earlier in your career, we've got a photo of you here.
Dude, the most photoshopped family picture I've ever seen about. We were on a cruise. So funny, dude. I look like I'm in a soap opera, like with all my children. This is such a funny picture. You know, this picture has haunted me, and I'll tell you why. We were on the cruise, and my mother's like, "We gotta take a picture. We gotta take a picture." And I'll never forget. I was like, "Mom, this is so cheesy, man. I don't want to take this picture." And my mother looks at me and goes, "What's the worst that could happen?" Well, Mom, it followed me all the way to every interview. Even Joe Coy has this picture of me. And you know what? My family to me is such a gift, man. And even this picture, even though I hate this picture because it's just we're just super. It's not us. Like if you get us, we're very wild and fun. Like my personality comes from my mom and dad, and this looks like we're doing an Easter photo. And it was just on a cruise. Like I don't know. I love my family, man.
Well, tell me more about your family. I know that you grew up in Phoenix.
Yeah.
You're of Assyrian descent.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you come to America? Why did your family come to America? Where were you born?
I was born in Chicago.
You were born in Chicago, then moved to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now you're in LA.
So my mom and dad came from Iraq, and there was trouble out there. There wasn't freedom of speech. There wasn't freedom of religion. And my father's father, they didn't want their children to be raised in a place where they couldn't wear a cross. My dad would be fighting for his life every day, just walking to school or going to a certain place. And they have a totally, totally different mindset. And man, like, I'm so grateful to be coming from this bloodline because, well, one, I take a lot of pride in being Assyrian. Assyrian, if you look biblically, is just one of the oldest. And also, Jesus spoke that language. So when I'm watching The Passion of the Christ and I understand what's going on, I think there's just so much to Assyrian people that should be unpacked. I mean, they created math, they created wrestling, astronomy. I don't even know if I said that right. All my ancestors are just rolling in their graves. Right? They invented the wheel.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They always tell me, you can't reinvent the wheel. I said, why not? My ancestors made it. I could probably do it. But I want to say something about my dad and my mom, both God-fearing. And every compliment that everything that I receive, like how I speak or how I think, it's because these people love me and they love me extremely correctly. And if I could be half the parent that they were to me, then my children will be blessed. Thanks for showing me
That's
that.
beautiful.
Man. Even though I hate that picture.
Thank you. We'll leave it here for now. Well, so you grow up in Phoenix, and I've heard you speak about you being essentially a little bit of a phenom at a young age in the entertainment world. Can you talk to me about that? What was your first exposure to the media?
When I was younger, my mom and dad showed me a Michael Jackson tape. And they were like, he's the king of pop. And I'm like, what is that? And they were like, oh, he's a dancer, he's a singer. And I watched him do a performance, and I got up and I just did the exact performance, the moonwalk, everything. And my mom and dad were just like, hey, yo, this kid can't read a book to save his life, but
he can moonwalk.
Yeah. And so that year I entered the talent show. I think it was like the second or third grade. And I had the whole fit, and I did the exact routine of him. And the whole school kind of hated me because I was just like always in trouble, always in detention, always like I was very loud and obnoxious. And
do you think that came from having so much love from your family that it filled you with confidence, or what was it?
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of me knowing that I wasn't good in school. I was very dyslexic and I had ADHD. And so they just didn't know what to do. So they would throw a lot of drugs on me and like resource classes. They would,
Like ADHD meds?
yeah,
Oh, wow. From what
Yeah.
age?
in the second grade. And when I went
So
into the third
how old
grade,
is that?
I don't know. I don't want to just say a number and then I don't know.
Yeah, but that's like,
I got held back in the third grade, and that's when they started to try to like implement that stuff. And
wow.
but my mom took me off of it like within 2 weeks of being on it.
Okay.
And the Lord didn't let it go in my stomach. So every time I would take the pill, for some reason, as soon as I was walking towards the bus station, I would just vomit a lot.
Wow.
And so the 2 weeks that I was technically on it, God didn't let it sit in and He just like make me throw it up all the time. And God came to my mom and said, "Hey, like I don't want him on this." And so she took me off of it. And that I think that I do stand-up comedy, and a lot of my comedy is based off of me being just crazy as a kid.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun stories there. And yeah, they just threw a lot at me. I mean, in fact, they put glasses on me because they thought I couldn't read. I couldn't see because when I was doing the test, I was flipping the letters.
Yeah.
And so like I was just it was a lot of hurdles. And so I just like to make people laugh. And I realized that was like where I sat well and people weren't upset with me. And so I just leaned more into it. And it's so weird. When I was younger, my teachers and everybody was like, "Yo, your kid is not going to amount to anything. Like he's F's in every single thing." And my mom and dad were both like, "No, the Lord has a plan for him." And they were just super at peace. And so I just failed every class. I mean, I only graduated because they looked at me as mentally challenged because I was in a resource class.
Wow.
I wasn't going to walk. And then I was like, man, I wish I was still in that resource class. And then the lady was like, "You were in that resource class?" And I was like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh, we legally have to graduate you." And I was like, "I'll take it." And I walked that way.
Well, if you could pick one story from your childhood that
Yeah.
you think sums it up in the best way, what would it be?
Oh, dude. I think the liquor store always was like, is what I think about in my childhood. I was raised in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a beautiful place. And my dad had a liquor store in somewhat a rougher neighborhood. And so I was raised in such a funny way, man. I had friends that were like crackheads. My dad put a pistol in my hand at the age of like 14, and we had to like watch the liquor store, and like the way he dealt with it was very Iraqi refugee style, like super illegal. Like, in fact, I had to talk to my attorney because all these jokes I was saying, I'm like, they're real. And like, I was kind of nervous about telling these jokes, and he's like, "Nah, it's fine. It's like, it's been too long." And, but I was raised basically in a house where we always put God first. We always loved our neighbors, but we held ourselves accountable. Like, for example, I got held back or I was, made fun of or life was hard in school. My mom would never let me be sad. But she wasn't rude about it. She would pull me aside and be like, "Hey, do you know maybe they're angry with you?" Now, mind you, she's talking to a third grader. She was like, "Maybe they're angry with you because their mommy and daddy, they don't love them. So what they give to them, they try to give to you. So what do we think we should do for them?" And I said, "Give them more love." And she's like, "But why do you want to give them more love?" I was like, "Because my mom and dad give me love at home." She goes, "Do you feel safe at home?" And I go, "Yes." She goes, "Then try to make them feel safe in school." And so at a young age, she always taught me to turn the cheek, but not like in a, we have to turn the other cheek, but it's like she made me break it down. Why did we do it? And that always kind of stuck with me.
Is there anything you wish your parents did differently when they raised you?
No, truly not a single thing. Like truly not a single thing. I think even the things that they lacked, like, for example, trying to have a conversation with a dad that speaks broken English, it's like you're on skates because if you say something in his mind, he thinks it's disrespectful. He's smacking me. He's not asking me, "Hey, are you being disrespectful?" So it taught me to be very gentle when I'm speaking to somebody and understand facial recognition. Are they understanding me? Are they frustrated with me? So even their faults, God used for his strength. So now I'm able to communicate better. But also I knew their heart. I knew that they loved me. It's not like they were trying to be that way. But no, even their downside of things God still made it very good for me.
And you've spoken before about experiencing some miracles that make the existence of God and Jesus undeniable. Are you comfortable sharing any of the experiences you've had with me?
Yeah, but I'll do it in a way that it sits well with everybody.
One of the biggest lies sold to our generation that we've just accepted is that phone addiction is simply a self-control problem. I don't think that's true anymore. If you put an ordinary person against teams of behavioral psychologists, machine learning engineers, and trillion-dollar companies optimizing for attention, of course they're going to lose. The answer isn't feeling guilty. The answer is changing the environment. That's why I've been trying Shift. Unlike almost every blocker I've used before, Shift puts the control somewhere I can't instantly override from my phone, which means when my future self inevitably tries to negotiate with himself, he can't. I still have all the useful parts of my phone. I can still work, travel, and communicate. I've just removed the things that quietly consume hours of my life. If attention is the foundation of a meaningful life, protecting it is probably one of the highest return investments you can make. Shift gives you lifetime access with one payment. No subscriptions, no hidden fees. You can get 20% off through my link. So go to shiftyourphone.com or click the link in the show notes to try it for yourself. That's shiftyourphone.com.
I truly believe in a man named Jesus Christ. And in Genesis 1, he says that the word became flesh. And so when he left us again, he left us this God-breathed Bible. And this gospel, man, I've seen people hate it and try to read it to debunk it and then fall in love with it. I've seen scientists get baptized. I've seen my friends that used to mock me, and I just begged them, just give it a chance, get baptized. Like, this thing is indestructible. It's bulletproof. And so when I tell people I see this miracle, I think the first miracle overall is the gospel of how strong and how long it's lasted. It says that heaven and hell will pass away, but my words will last forever. Think about us. We get bored with something we watched 5 years ago. This man, Jesus, talked to us 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, he told us, why are you being anxious? Be grateful. And now scientists are saying you cannot be grateful and anxious at the same time. You could literally choose it, like a light that you turn on in your head. So that's the miracles that I discuss. And yes, there is supernatural ones, but me saying it would actually hurt the kingdom, because if a man doesn't have eyes to see it, he'll think I'm doing witchcraft or voodoo things, or it's made up in my head. But if they took time to step close to the man who created everything, that same man will take a step towards you. And when he takes a step, the earth moves, like you feel it around you.
That's such a beautiful answer, and it sits really well with me as someone who's not a believer and who's just been exploring. I grew up in Brighton in the UK, which is the most atheist part of the UK. So I was raised on the idea that the Bible is stupid, it's ridiculous. Anything that you can't see and measure with science is akin to magic or Santa or a flying spaghetti monster, right? And I think the way you've put it sits really well with me.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
When you were growing up, what was the sense of peace like around you?
I was weirdly at peace in my own world as someone who's raised by a single mother. So I still FaceTime my dad every day. I see him as often as I can. He's been really supportive, and I wouldn't change anything the way I was raised either. But I was raised mostly by my mother, and she had to work as well, pay the bills. So I would often be sat in my own bedroom playing with my Lego soldiers, lining them up for a fucking Lego war. And that was where I found peace, was by myself, hyperfixated on something, like a classic British autist. I'm not actually autistic. I don't think, although I haven't had a test.
Yeah, I think we all are. I think that test could be put away now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's where I found peace, but it wasn't in the comfort of a family dinner. It would be from the love and affection of my mum.
Amen.
And she had that in abundance. She's literally, I mean, to put it in your talk, an angel sent down, right, for me. And I couldn't ask for more love shown to me, to the point now where with my girlfriend or with my mum, if they don't say I love you every 2 minutes, I'm like, oh, they don't love me anymore, you know? But the peace was from that affection and attention from my mum whenever she could give it, and also kind of being in my own space.
The relationship that you have with your mom and your Legos and the peace that you have, was it unwavering? Was it forever, or was there times you played with your Lego or you sat in your house and that magic wasn't there anymore?
I've certainly been very impatient with my mum at times and wish I treated her differently. I remember as a kid, I was awful. I was like 4 or 5. I'd just have tantrums and I'd scream the house down if I didn't get exactly what I wanted. And I'm probably still like that a little bit. So I wouldn't say it was unwavering for sure.
imagine a cup. There was a saying I saw online, and he goes, "There's two men. One has a cup that's
Two girls,
full."
one cup.
No, different. I saw the autism popped out. just yeah, I seen that. That's nasty. I showed my mom once with my Lego set. It was gross. No, there was this guy online, and he said, there's two guys and they're drinking, and one looks at his cup to see if he has enough, and the other one looks at his cup to see if he has more than him. And I see these two men a lot. And that stuck with me. I was like, wow, I do see that. I see men that are generous and they go and they give. And then I see men that are in desperate need and they need somebody to refill them. And what I try to describe using this scenario is, imagine that your father had an unlimited source. So when I'm sitting here, it's overpouring from my hand. It's so much that I have to pour it to you, because it's if I fill up your cup and I go back, by the time my wrist even goes like this, it's fully brimming out again. That is my relationship with Jesus, because he gives me so much love and so much peace that I want to run to you, not to tell you that you're wrong or you're right or what I deem is right. I'm trying to give riches that are worth more than ruby and gold at your feet. And so when I try to explain this to people, a car salesman tries to sell you a car until it's a Bugatti, and then now he's not trying to sell it to you no more. Now you're going to try to get it from me. But how do we do this in a world that doesn't even value Jesus to be that well? So what I always try to do when I'm sitting in this setting is, you gave me a chance. You listened to my heart. You've watched my videos. Give Jesus a chance. Listen to his words. That's all it takes. It's not a mass. It's not a ritual. It's not a miracle that's happening. It's, did you give him time to hear his voice and give it a chance? He describes his words as seeds, right? I find it very interesting that he creates us out of dirt. If you put a seed in a dirt and you do the right thing and it sits well, it grows fruit. But if it rejects the word, it'll never grow. So I'm not telling you I figured it all out. I'm just saying, you think that my peace is something worth listening towards, but I'm a grain of salt compared to where the peace comes from. And I want you to give him a chance and listen to his words, because mine are it's sewed in with stupidity.
Well, everything you've said, it sits with me in a very profound way. And I appreciate you saying it for me and for the audience at home. And we're speaking about supernatural encounters here. And you said, I'll put this in a digestible way for people. Can we not do that now? Can we just speak about what George has encountered and what's special to you?
All right.
In the space of 5 years, I've had the chance to meet Joe Rogan in his podcast studio. I've gone from being a fanboy of Chris Williamson to hanging out with him for dinner and in his new podcast studio. I built up the Trigonometry podcast from 300,000 subscribers to 1 million, going on multiple tours to America with them. It's pretty surreal looking back at all the knowledge I've been fortunate enough to have imparted on myself, and it feels wrong to just gatekeep that for myself. But luckily for you, whether you're an aspiring podcaster who's done 0 episodes or someone who's done hundreds and can't quite seem to crack the code to make it work, I've got something just for you. I've gone into a partnership with my best mate and fellow podcaster Chris Griffin to create Pod Pro, the best podcast school in the world. Since meeting last year in Austin through a mutual friend, we've slept in cars together, we've built productions in LA warehouses, and we've climbed mountains and placed a full cinema production on top of it. The mentorship includes live weekly calls with both Chris and myself, access to our team for direct client success meetings, as well as different modules we've put together with the actual frameworks we use for everything in the podcast space. This is designed to take you from A to Z and for you to have a comprehensive understanding of it all. I genuinely can't imagine a better podcast offer in the world from any other podcasters in the space. And that might sound egotistical, but I don't think there's someone who's actively walking the walk while still being aware of every part of the process, being in the trenches at a level as high as Chris and I. So to apply, go to thepodpro.com/Elliot or click the link in the description. Put in your details and my team will be in touch. That's thepodpro.com/Elliot.
All right. I pray this comes off in a way where it sits well with people. I pray that a lot of ears could hear it. Jesus is walking around and he's healing people. And this one lady comes up to him bleeding and destroyed. And in her heart, she goes, if I just touch his clothes, I'll be healed. And so he's passing through, and there's people in the trees looking at him. There's murmuring. There's people speaking ill. And she just, as he walks by, grabs his cloth, and immediately she was healed. And he turns around and he goes, who touched me? I felt power leave me. Who touched me? Now, obviously he knows, but he wants her to say it. And scared, but she still says it. She says, it was me. And he kneels to her and he says, it was your faith that healed you. Now I paused there and I said, the Lord that hung the stars just gave us a quick little scan. It wasn't Jesus because she grabbed him. It was her faith in Jesus. And then I look through all of the scriptures when he raises Lazarus from the dead, when he's taking care of the crippled, when he's doing all these things, it's based off of their faith. And then he says in the gospel that if you believe it, you'll get it. And then I grew up in a world where in the 90s, they're like, if you believe it, you could achieve it. But then I'm seeing wickedness happen. They believe wicked things, but then they have it. And then I grow up and I realize, I go, oh my God, he gave us life and death on our tongue. So this is what I've kind of gathered in my heart. There's a spirit that hovers around you. It could either be good or it could be bad. I pray that mine's good. So I read the gospel. Now, the words that are in my mind, I sit there and I meditate on. He says to hold every thought captive. So the ones that I think that are negative, that only I could hear, I hold them accountable. I hold them in my heart. Why do you think this way? Get rid of it. I try to push it out of my heart and I replace it in my head. Then what follows after that is it sits in the heart. Do you believe it? Whatever you believe, it falls out of your mouth. Now, when I walk around and I see depressed people or anxious people, the first thing I notice is the way they speak. I see people that are very successful. I grew up and I got to watch Jake and Logan come from Ohio to where they're at. The first thing that they taught me was what their mouth was saying. They looked at me and they told me what they were going to do. And then they went and they did it. So then God's giving me this opportunity to look at his words and put them to the test. And so I said, oh my goodness, anything I truly believe and say will come true. Doesn't that make it exciting, but also dangerous? Because our minds are being programmed to think horribly and our hearts are babbling terrible thoughts. So now what I'm trying to do is believe on Jesus a little bit more than me and put his thoughts in my heart. So that way I could recite his words and not the ones that they're programming me to say. And so if you want to see a miracle, I'm doing it in front of the whole world. I'm letting them know what I'm doing years before I do it. I told them about me starting a podcast. I told my team I had a dream about me interviewing Andrew Tate a year before it happened. I told them I was going to do stand-up. Last year, I couldn't even sell my tour. I was struggling, and God said, tell them the dreams that I've given you of doing 3 stadiums. I was like, God, this is embarrassing. How can I tell them that when I'm struggling with the theater? And he says, do you believe me or you? And so like a stupid head, I felt like. I went up to my friends and family that know that I'm struggling with this. And I said, the Lord showed me I'm going to do 3 stadiums. January, February, March, I did 3 stadiums. I did 2 with TPUSA. It was exactly how I saw it. And then I did 1 with GCU, exactly how I saw it. And so that's my miracle, is I'm crazy enough to believe in the word of God. So much so that the average man calls me crazy, but I find great glory in that. Keep calling me crazy. It's fine. Because you guys look up to the ones that you guys call crazy. So I've rejected the heart of the world and I don't let them dictate what I think is right or wrong. And as soon as I did that, I got everything that I've ever wanted before. Now pause. If I had to break down my actions, I could do it through a gospel verse. Seek first the kingdom of God and all of its righteousness, and then the rest shall come. So when I was at my rock bottom, I had to call out to God. I begged him. And then through chasing him, he gave me everything more than what I could desire to ask him for. But then I sat there and I said, but God, I don't deserve it. 3 years ago, I was like, but God, I don't deserve it. And now I'm like, God, I do not deserve it. Same man, different posture of my heart. And so now I'm doing stand-up and I'm getting off these stages and I feel great. And I think that when I was a little boy, I pictured myself making the whole world laugh, but also think. And I think that I'm borrowing wisdom and talent from the Lord. And I think if he lets me, I'll be able to do great things. But here's the best part. It's not where my peace and joy comes from anymore. That is the fruit that I give other people. I'm in the same position. Okay, this is the best way I can put it. God says, cursed are the ones who asks for signs. I know a lot of people that are like, God, give me a sign. But the demons, they could throw signs at you all day. So now you're a walking man who's giving rights to other spirituality to dictate. Like, for example, if I make this shot, I'll move to LA. My buddy, you suck at basketball. Why are you putting your whole life to this? That doesn't make sense. And then you read on, and he says, you should ask for the signs that have already been revealed to you, but you're too blind to see. That's more of a humble heart, isn't it? If you went up to your mom and you're like, Mom, prove to me that you love me. She'd be like, prove to you that you love me. I raised you by myself.
Yeah.
I put a roof above your head and I put those Legos in front of you. How dare you ask me? But if you went and you said, hey, Mom, is there anything that you've done for me that I haven't thanked you for? How much better and healthier is that relationship?
Yeah, I heard a story told the other day on a podcast with Drew Lynch and my friend Chris Griffin, who's just on set here. And Drew was talking about how these people, they often look for a sign from God that it's time. You know, I've got this God-given power in me and it's time to go and roll with it. And the best metaphor for that is someone that's drowning and they have a sign from God. He speaks to them. He goes, you know, I'm going to save you. Don't worry. I'm going to pull you out of the water. You're not going to drown. And then 5 minutes later, in the current comes this raft with someone paddling on it. And they go, jump on. Come on. They go, no, I'm fine. God told me he's going to save me. So you can keep on trucking on. And they go past. And then they see a life jacket in the water. It's been washed by the current to them. And they don't grab onto it because they go, no. God told me he's going to come and save me. And then finally a big ship comes along and it's a lifeguard. The lifeguard goes, come on, man, you're drowning. Jump on. We're going to help you. And he goes, no. It's fine. God's coming to save me. And this guy goes on to drown. And he still goes to heaven. And he speaks to God and he goes, God, why didn't you save me? He goes, bro.
One after another.
I gave you a life jacket. I gave you a raft. I even gave you the lifeguards on that boat. But you didn't take it. And I think that's incredibly powerful for me as someone who's a non-believer, because there's often this caricature of God, and you ask atheists, whether it's Richard Dawkins, whether it's Alex O'Connor, what would make them believe? And they say it would have to be some sort of divine vision in front of me. A lot of the time people even comment on that and go, well, would you really believe then? Or would you just say it's a hallucination? You know, you can never really truly prove it. You always convince yourself, if in your heart at the moment you don't want to believe in God, then you just will tell yourself it was a hallucination, it was the way the wind blew, it was some lighting, whatever, you know. There's often this caricature by atheists where it has to be something like God himself there, stood in front of you in the form of Jesus, when it's like, no, there are better clues than this. And I try to pay attention to them as much as possible. The thing that I struggle with is, if I'm honest with you, I pay attention to the potential existence of God the most when I'm either at my highs or at my lows. But when I'm not, it's kind of just background noise. It's unnecessary. I'm just trucking along with life. So how do you deal with that? How do you make sure that you actually pay attention in the in-between too?
Trial and error. There's a verse, I'm going to bring it up with water, so hopefully it could correlate. Peter's on a boat. Jesus is outside standing on the water. Pretty ridiculous. You're like watching him be in a place that he shouldn't be. Storm is going nuts. The disciples are like, we're dead. And then in the middle of all this chaos, God says to Peter, come off the boat, stand on the water. He gets off and he stands on the water. Now, I'm going to describe this in a way that's like anxiety and depression. As soon as you go underwater, it feels the same way, man. You can't breathe. You can't think. Your heart races. You panic. You're spinning. Maybe you grab onto something for a second and then it just drops. And then you grab it and then you drop. Peter only went under the water when he took his eyes off of God and focused on his problems. As soon as he took his eyes off of God and looked at the thunder or the storm or the chaos, So I tell people, was that meant for us? When we look at everybody and be like, bro, I feel like I'm underwater. When it's like, okay, but what do you have your eyes on? And that, if you want to ask about a supernatural miracle that happened to me, that has changed my life. Because now, whenever I feel that way, I realize, okay, what am I doing? I'm not focusing on the King of Peace. And now on the Sermon on the Mount, he's preaching to everybody, and he says something very valuable to me. He says, the peace that I give to you is not the peace from this world. It's from my kingdom. So my peace to you is above your understanding. There's moments that you and I both, we've had moments where we encountered God. I've encountered God when I read the gospel or have this moment, but you've encountered God, like you said, at your lowest or your highest, and it's uncalculable. It's above my understanding. It's above my pay grade. It would be illogical for me in my brain to try to fathom how good my God is. So what I do is I just believe in his words. And when I see that his words, I cannot break them. I try to, man. I try to go, well, this doesn't make sense. But then reality hits, his words are perfected. And the way that they tie together, no man could untie them. And so the next time you feel like you're underwater, I want you to remember this story and just say, okay. And I want you to do this one thing. And I promise you your life will change. Don't run to the Bible. Don't run to mass. Don't do anything. Get on your knees right there when you're anxious and say, Lord Jesus Christ, King of peace, bestow me peace. And when you feel it, it's because he fed you is when you're going to come after him. He said, I don't know him, bro, because I was just walking along. I know him because he fed me when I was starving. It says that a man cannot live off of bread alone, but every word that comes out of the mouth of the Lord. Dude, I've seen the highest of life and the lowest of life. And both of them, when they do not have Jesus, is hell. Both of them.
What's the most memorable low point for you?
Oh, dude, there's way too many. There's way too many. I don't know if I can name a certain one, but I could say that every time I go through it, I'm always like, yo, do you hate me? Like, what's going on here? And then when I'm done with the lesson, I'm like, Lord, if I could do it all over again, I would. Like every bit of it. I think of it as the crucifixion effect. The crucifix was the worst thing that ever happened, but at the same time, the greatest thing that ever happened. So sometimes when something really bad happens to us, we think that we're buried, but in reality, we're being planted, and it's about to be a really nice reaping season. I think impulsive is a special one for me because the whole world examined it. I've gone through things my whole life, but watching how that panned out and random strangers coming up to me and being like, yo, I believe in God because I watched what happened to you. That to me is a blessing to me. That I think that's one of my coolest ones. And I pray that story is not done. I really do pray that I feel like right now in my life that I'm thriving, and it would be disingenuous if I didn't say that Jesus gave me Logan. And so when I'm sitting here at a platform I don't deserve, but he gave it through a man that me and him don't even speak anymore, it damages my heart. And every night I ask God, like, he gave me the world. I would love to give him the kingdom of God. It could be only a better gift. I can't give him a gift subpar. Like, I dreamt about all the stuff that I'm doing, and yet a man from Ohio got built up to teach me things. And so what breaks my heart more than anything is that when we were friends, he knew that I was always grateful. And when we separated, I was in my arrogant stages. When I was talking to Mike, I said something, and I wish I could go back and never say it. And so I kind of want to take this platform to correct myself. I was trying to throw out many reasons on why I was pissed at him. And one of them was financial. I was like, we weren't even getting paid. And at the end, even though we were getting paid less than what we were, it was a dig. It was a shot at his ego. And I knew that was. But from his heart, he saw it as like, dude, you lied. You lied in front of the whole world. that to me, even though I could just be like, bro, you disregarded every other thing, and I could have taken it from an ego place. Like, are you crazy, bro? That's, you know that I didn't even mean it like that. Like, but he hung on to it. And before I was so egotistical to be like, bro, get over it. Like, you know what I was trying to get at. You were sidestepping me and you were using this as a mechanism to like forget about all these things. Like, I saw what you were doing. And then when I humbled myself, I realized I'm like, bro, like if he caught it as a lie and it was in my heart a misunderstanding, I felt like I've always been open about being grateful to him. But if he saw it as a lie and yet I'm trying to teach him about Jesus and the truth, I just destroyed everything. Me, the man who wants him to see it, because Logan's trying to see it from an honest point. And if he sees, dude, you told him you weren't making money and you know damn well I made you a millionaire. Like, how could you do that to me?
Well, can you break that down for me a little bit further? Just because it feels like there's a lot going on here with the payments. And for anyone that doesn't know what
Me
went
and Logan
on.
separated just because we were kind of just over each other. And at the ends, we were kind of gloves off. He would say stuff on the podcast to disrespect me, and I would say stuff to disrespect him.
Was that your only form of communication, just through others?
Yeah,
other
you know what it
podcasts?
felt like to me? It felt like when you love somebody so much, you'll just hang on to an argument because you miss them. I love the kid. Dude, like, I didn't have friends growing up. So he thinks the greatest thing that he gave me was a career, but it was a friend. Like, I loved having a friend, like being able to do all these things. And it crushes me that people compliment me and where I'm at, and now they just badmouth him. They'll be like, yeah, good. You're not with him. And I'm like, dude, that's not my heart posture. Like, we had a disagreement. It got gross and we separated from it. But I don't know. I feel like I want to use your platform to correct something that hurt his heart. And it was that he sees the way that I talked about his financing as a lie. And I was using it as something to annoy him or to just go back and forth. But I want it to be said that I was very much taken care of. That wasn't the reason why I walked away. The reason I walked away is because we had different beliefs. We're getting underneath each other's skins. I saw it that way. I had a Celsius contract, and he thought that I took the contract without talking to him first. But in my heart, I thought it was okay because Jake had it. And he always told me business was business. And so when I kind of saw that they were not as excited to have me on the podcast, I try to stand for myself on my own platform, but it was all me. I had the wisdom to be peaceful about it and be like, hey, like, we should just move on, man. Like, we don't want to work together. But I was hurt and I took matters into my own hand. And what I wanted to do, and this is very arrogant, this is where a lot of death came into the situation. I wanted him to know how strong I was without him. It wasn't for the world, it was for him. It was because I didn't want him to think that I was only around because I wanted something. I wanted to know that I was valuable and that this relationship to me is more worth it because of our friendship rather than us arguing. And so I'm hanging myself out to dry, and I pray that the Lord could heal whatever I did wrong to get him not to trust me. And if a man doesn't trust you, he can't hear you. And I was wrong for that. It's way more wrong for me to have wisdom on to know how to handle it. God made it very clear how to handle it, humble myself and serve him. But I didn't. I raised my sword against him. And I was like, all right, bro, like if you want to go toe to toe, we'll go toe to toe. And I remember when he posted the receipts video, I was so excited because I was like, oh, boom, now he's going to come on the podcast and I'll deal with him on the podcast. And so like I posted a video and I was like, all right, cool. Come on the podcast. We'll discuss this as men, eye to eye. And my buddy called me. He goes, that's not you, man. He's like, I don't know who that man is. Take that video down right now. And I took it down immediately, but it already kind of like went out there. And now like years go by and I just sit there and I reflect and I go, if I was wiser and I handled that better, our relationship would be in a better place. I don't know where his heart would be with the Lord, but I kept looking at God being like, why? And God's like, yeah, because you're doing everything wrong, man. Like you can't plant a watermelon and think you're going to get an apple tree. And so I was sowing these seeds of like anger and pride and I was waging war and I was scratching my head. I'm like, why is this guy who fights for his life fighting back at me? And
I think the main thing there as well, from everything you've just outlined, is the things that you were fighting over. they were what you would refer to as worldly things, right?
Mm.
It's your status, it's popularity, it's money.
Yeah.
Rather than, if I'm looking at this as someone who's an outside viewer, if you both had this love for God, Jesus, and you held on to that, maybe you didn't do certain things, all the other stuff becomes irrelevant, right? Because you're prioritizing serving the kingdom and building it and spreading the word. It feels like that prioritization, that worship of those external validators, that is what caused you to do things that you're now saying you regret. So I guess, and I hope that's like a fair characterization.
I'll go even deeper and even more humiliating. When I was with him, the problem that the Lord had with me wasn't Logan's behavior. It was the fact that I was worshiping. What you fear, you worship. That's why it says the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. Was I fearing God or was I fearing Logan? Who in my mind was putting the bread on my table? So when I became an idol worshiper, dude, only death comes from that. So it's, in my eyes, farther than what they could see it as. But the only person that caused a problem in that camp, in my eyes, was me. Because if I had the wisdom to figure it out and I chose not to, I feel it's a far greater sin than the man who's truly blinded by the actions of what he was doing.
Well, I try to talk a lot about solutions on my show, and the ultimate goal of this is to help young people flourish. That's kind of the goal of the next generation. And I'm actually not interested in any of the beef that happened with you and Logan and Mike a couple of years ago. That's been covered to death. What I guess I'm interested in, for the sake of other people who are going to go into business ventures with their best friends, they're going to work with other people because that's what life is, right?
Yeah.
If you take me back to when this photo was taken here, what would you have said to Logan to prevent all of the beef from happening?
You know, when I look at him, I see my brother. And when we split apart, in my arrogant mind, I said, oh, good, God needs to keep him apart from me so he could grow, and then we'll come back together and we'll build up. But in reality, it was me that needed to grow. And so when I was out in the desert and I was learning, now my prayers are, I pray that, I don't think the love ever went. I think that if you ever asked him, I pray that he would say he would love me. There's never been a day that I don't love this man. And I pray that one day that God will put enough love and wisdom in both of our minds that we could build something good together instead of like having such a silly, stupid argument. Yeah. You know, it's when I met him, there was a lot of qualities of him that I wish I never had. But there's so many that I wish I did have.
Like what?
Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. He's such a leader, right? And when he walks into the room, he was younger than me, but man, everybody always felt like he was like older. Like he was like, I think what happens is people now, they're like, oh, you're a good leader. But I think I had to follow in the footsteps of what a leader looks like for me to learn how to be a leader. Now, mind you, there's bad qualities of what he had. I think that he's super aggressive as a leader, bro. Like he'll smash down anything that he thinks. I think he doesn't weigh things out with his heart. I think he's more of like a let's conquer and move on, you know? You know, and I was more of a like, hey, let's be patient and like understand things. But I was a sissy, if that makes sense. Or like I would always like kind of hang back. But there was one time we were on this set. And man, the way he would talk to me and treat me, it's like he was training me. Like it was weird. And we're on this set and there's this thing where on a set, I forgot what it's called, but it's like a slate
Clapper
thing.
board,
A slap thing. It's a slate. It's the easiest job. It's the easiest job. Now, why Logan found me fascinating is because I was entertaining. I was a good writer with him. I knew how to act with him. So he would try to give me more. The one thing that I will give him credit is he's never shy on blessing you with more. If you deserve it, he'll give you more. We're on set. And he asked them for me to be a part of the set, just like a small thing. And so I'm just sitting around. I'm just always asking, come on, man, put me to work. What can I do? What can I do? And he's just kind of like, fuck, man, like this kid's like. So he goes up to me, he gives me the slate. He goes, dude, I talked to the director and I convinced him that you could do this. Don't fuck this up, dude. Yo, it wasn't even the first one. It slipped out of my hand, and it's like this fiberglass one, and it just shattered on the ground. And I was just like, oh my God. And I just looked up at him, and he just looked at me and he goes, I'm disappointed. Dude, until this day, bro. I'm like, oh, bro, I felt like such an idiot, dude. That's my favorite. That's what I think it is. He would always just call me to be greater. He never let me sit in like something that I thought was good. Like he would shred me. If I gave him a piece of content and he loved it, oh, I would go to bed with tears in my eyes because I was like, oh, this is amazing work. This is great work. But if he was like, yo, this is trash, I'm like, all right, it's the most common one. I have to go back to the drawing board. But it made me realize how to be honest with people. Now he's a little bit more aggressive. He grew up with GP in his life, so he like rips the Band-Aid off and just slaps you. It doesn't even do anything. I'm more of a loving type of person. I'll heal, but I grew that wisdom of it's better to give a man truth, because here's the reason why. He didn't care that I disliked him or that I got upset with him. He only cared of the outcome, and that's a true leader. He doesn't care that he's the bad guy. He cares that you get better. And so I just try to find how to do that in a truly loving way. And so there's a lot of things that man, I asked his mom, dad, and his brother. That was the first thing I asked. I'm like, how do you guys feel about it? And they all told me, and this is like, they said this on a podcast. They said, nobody loved my son like you. And so I know we've gone through some fights, but I hope at least he knows that like I'll always be there. If he needs me, I'll always be there. What are you doing with me, bro? With all the how many more people like, hey, so your mom gave birth to you. What do you think about this umbilical cord, bro? Just like, how many more pictures do you have, bro? Like,
We'll see.
You come prepared, dude. I got to rethink the way I come to this podcast.
The thing that comes to mind straight away for me with all of this is what I spoke to Bryce Crawford about, who I know you're friends with.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man?
Call him Spider-Man, dude.
Why?
Because I have this, I gathered the Avengers, and when I met Bryce, dude, like, it was like, when I was standing in front of a man, I was like, yo, this guy's going to do something great for the kingdom. And so I just call him Spider-Man because I just think he's the youngest, but the strongest. I think he's like really mighty.
Yeah, well, I had this experience, and it's worth going down this rabbit hole because it's a cool story about Bryce. I went to his show when he was on tour in Houston, Texas, and I drove a couple of hours with a couple of Christian friends that I have, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to go and see Bryce Crawford? I've got a couple of tickets. They were like, dude, would we? And we drove 2 hours. I say we, they drove me because I don't have a car here in America.
Hilarious.
And we went and saw him. It was a Saturday night in Houston, downtown in this big theater. It was one of the biggest shows of the tour. It's about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
All Gen Z, all about 21 years old, same age as me. And they're all worshiping Jesus on a Saturday night in downtown Houston. It's not near any residential places. They all would have driven there.
Yeah.
They all could have gone to the clubs and gotten wasted and whatever, but they were there with Bryce, worshiping Jesus. And as an outsider there, I was like, whoa, this is something special. And that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was after the show when I got to hang with Bryce and ask him, how do you feel? You just sold out this theater with a bunch of 21-year-olds on a Saturday night in downtown Houston. How does it feel? And he didn't do this in a disrespectful way. He kind of just dismissed my question and was like, yeah, I just love Jesus. Cool. Do you want to go outside and see the tour bus that everyone's signing every time they donate to kids in Africa and spreading the word to them?
Compassion International.
Yeah. And I was like, I'd love to. But I was kind of walking behind him and I was like, did I say something wrong? Like, is he annoyed with me? And of course, Bryce wasn't annoyed with me. He was giving me his time. He was taking me outside. He just was completely unfazed. And like, it's hard to describe to someone who's watching this or listening to it, but every fiber of his being was focused on Jesus and his mission rather than being up on that stage. And I don't think I can say the same for other people, especially in the political space, maybe, where they say they're going to help humanity and they get up on stage and they preach, but it's for them, right?
Yeah.
But I've never seen someone so calm. It was like he'd just gotten out of a 3-week yoga retreat.
He's the real deal. The best way I could explain it, I'm not Bryce, but I'm a friend that's witness. So I can tell you what my witness looks like. It looks to me that the devil had him strangling on the side of a cliff, about to toss himself in a place called Waffle House. And the Lord said to him, before you throw your life away, why don't you give it to someone who wants it, me? And so when he took it and God gave him that peace I was describing to you that's above all of this, yeah, that's why he's walking off that stage, because the presence that he has with Jesus is so far greater than even a stadium of people cheering, that his eyes, okay, this is even deeper. A man, when he's not, I think of it as a boy struggling, he's always looking at the problems and falling underneath. But a man looks at his potential and he follows. So a man could fall underneath the water, not just by looking at his problems, but looking at what he could get, the money, the power. It's still distracting him from Jesus, and he still falls the same way. That's why the rich feels the same way as the poor when they're weak, when they're down. But if Bryce is sincere, and which I feel he is, and when he's with the presence of the Lord, the cheers, the glamour, the gold, it's just dust that's going to fade one day. And so he knows it. And so he stays true to what he needs to be. And that's what grounds him and makes him humble. Now, that is why when I'm here and I had the fortunate enough to be there and then be torn down, to me now when I'm going up, the feeling is different. Before I wanted them to put their hands up to celebrate me. Now I want them to put their hands up to celebrate the Lord. That is what I described when you were saying with the Lego thing, that peace, but is above our understanding and far greater. Like when on the Sermon on the Mount, my peace I give to you is not the peace that this earth has. So a true Christian isn't a man who's sitting there preaching all the time. There's a very famous line that I love to say, and it says, preach the gospel to everyone you know, everyone you meet, every day at every moment. And if it's necessary, use your words. See, you judged him off of his actions, not his sermon. That's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be like Bryce.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to be more like Bryce.
Yeah.
Certainly young men should be more like Bryce. But I spoke to him on my show a few months ago, and I read to him probably my favorite part of the Bible, which is Mark 8:36. And it's, for what shall it profit a man if he's to gain the world but lose his very own soul? And it feels like this ties together everything we've been speaking about so far. The idea of these worldly objects that we worship, but they're worthless without love and family and, for you and Bryce, God. I wanted to tell that story about Bryce, and I'm so glad we've spoken for a while now and people can see this Christian radiating glow off of you. I think you guys are some of the most genuine creators in the world. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, man.
The difficult question here to ask is, you mention the Avengers, the Christian Avengers, you, the Knechtles, Bryce, Ruslan KD, Girls Gone Bible, your wife as well,
Yeah.
right? Who else is in it? Have I missed anyone? What's his name?
Johnny Chang.
Johnny Chang.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see. Something that I've seen a lot online recently is people criticizing the Christian Avengers, Bryce's new drink, Praise, and saying this is kind of a new era of Christian capitalism. It's kind of monetization of Christianity. And I honestly just don't have an opinion at all on this. It's such a big topic to weigh in on. But I can imagine it's really hard to balance as a creator, which by definition means you're making money from what you do. You want to spread the word. You want to praise Jesus at all times, if possible, right? How do you balance that with not overstepping and kind of almost blaspheming unintentionally?
First of all, very important question. Very important question. I think Bryce and the way the Girls Gone Bible and Ruslan and Johnny Chang, they're truly preaching and they're taking it in a ministry sense. I'm a stand-up comic. So I'm getting on stage talking about how stupid I am, but then also a lesson that I'm learning from God. God created me to make people laugh, ask questions, get to know people. I include God because I love him and I'm just sharing what I have at the table. I'm not asking you to donate or be a part of my ministry. If I sell you a ticket, I'm making you laugh. That's what I'm selling. I'm selling comedy, music, entertainment. Now for them, I can't answer for them. I think that's a tough question that they have to deal with. To be honest, I deal with it in a lower sense of form, as in like, is this joke glorifying God or is it glorifying me? And so I think that question always needs to be asked. I think that's a journey that a man has with the Lord. Uh, Ironically, before I was truly like dialed in, I used to be really worried about the comments and what people thought about me. And so I kind of like edged myself to fit everybody, and that kind of kills your audience a little bit. It's weird. But then you have this Kanye effect where you're like, dude, let them talk. Like, let them get a little angry. I only grew that when I realized how much I love God and how I don't really care about what they say. So there's always going to be critics. There's always going to be people that are like, that's wrong, that's right, this is right, that's wrong. I bring everything sincerely to the Lord, and I beg him to show me like what I'm doing wrong or right. And I pray that he unlocks wisdom. But unfortunately for Bryce and Girls Gone Bible and Johnny, much is given, much is tested. God has blessed them with a lot. So I think they're capable of dealing with criticism. And I pray that God gives Bryce the wisdom that he needs to go to. But I don't know, man. I think there's two versions of me. Like, hey, Bryce, do you need to have an energy drink? And then I take a pause and I'll be like, who are you, bro? Like, who are you to tell Bryce anything? Like, Bryce is a child selling out stadiums. God is allowing him to do this. If it's in his heart to create a beverage where somebody thinks about Jesus, I think I would be wasting my time trying to figure out if that's right or wrong versus me going back to my work and asking the Lord to deal with me here. It's not even my business. It's literally not my business. So that is how I've found peace in my heart. Like, truly, like when Jesus says, don't judge, I don't think it's necessarily for them. I think it's for us. When we judge, we hold that same measurement towards us. So if I went to Bryce and I judged every single thing that he's doing, it's because I'm probably doing that to myself. That's why when Jesus is going to the cross and he says, if you do these two commandments, you'll fulfill all of the laws. Love God with all of your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. I'm just living in a generation where people hate themselves. So I'm not shocked on the comments or the concerns about my brothers and sisters in the field. I've observed what's going on. I'm just not delegating it in my time because my time is limited and it's not something that concerns me.
Yeah, there's always going to be this balance between what you could hypothetically do and what's actually there in front of you, thanks to the life you've lived, the family you've had, the food you've eaten, the media you've consumed, whatever. And I guess someone could say, well, if Bryce really cared about spreading the word, he'd move to I don't know what the least religious part of the world is. It's probably the West. So he's in the right place. But he'd move somewhere where they don't have Christianity, and he'd travel around on a tour bus and he'd spend every penny making sure that the word gets spread rather than creating an energy drink. But then also, it's like, is there anyone better positioned than him to give the audience that he has, which is a younger audience that drinks energy drinks, an option that makes them actually think about Jesus? Like, no, there's not really anyone better positioned than him. So maybe that is the best option. But then at the same time, I do just go like, and this isn't me picking on Bryce specifically at all. Like, I love him. But with this kind of Christian capitalism and creators, there is an element, like I saw this video of this guy, he's like a real estate agent, and he puts a Christian proverb into the pavement outside the house. But then it's kind of these excessive mansions. And I'm like, are you really doing this for Jesus, or is it kind of for yourself? And then as an afterthought, you're spinning Jesus in to your mission. You're glorifying him as a second afterthought rather than as the main purpose.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Hypothetically, I'm vain and I'm all about myself. I want to boast in my glory. So I'm going to record this video about me feeding the 1,000 homeless people and clothing them and finding them shelter, right? And the whole time I'm looking for a brand deal sponsor. I'm looking for glory. I'm looking for love. Does it matter? Does it matter if they get fed? Does it matter if what God's mission was wanting been done? My thought process is this. Let's go back to Bryce. I notice a lot of people holding their stones about Praise Energy, but not one for Monster. I don't know, man. I find it quite curious that everybody's so quick to rip down a man who just wants to point people to Jesus, but make a profit. But the man who doesn't even care about pointing people to Jesus, but makes a profit, they're like, no, he's good guy. He's not bringing religion involved in this. I think the truth is this, man. I don't know if Bryce is an amazing human being, God's gift to earth, which I truly, in my heart, I do believe that, or a scumbag. If he's a scumbag and he's doing better work than me, doesn't that make me a bigger scumbag? Doesn't it? If I'm sitting here throwing a rock at a guy, yeah, hey, look at this asshole making money off of Praise Energy Drink and putting the Lord's name in all of these houses, and the guy goes, that's great. What did you do today? I'm like, all right. I talked about Bryce for 10 minutes. I really pointed out people who shouldn't do that. He goes, great. Have you fed anybody? Have you cared about anybody? He says that if you loved me, you wouldn't forget the orphans or the widows. People will say, why is Bryce doing this? But people forgot that Bryce started by grabbing a Bible and talking to somebody in the street. And he's doing this so he can make more money for his ministry. For example, there's a girl named Joyce Myers. They talk so bad about this girl. She's the one that made me realize about Jesus. They talk so bad about this girl that even I, in my own heart, was like, yeah, this girl's like, bro, like, what, are you serious, bro? Like, selling all these books and making all these monies and da-da-da-da-da. And then I went to her place and I saw every flag I've ever seen in my life, even my Assyrian people's flag. She's done more for Assyrian people than I've done for Assyrian people. And then I looked at her and I just asked her off camera, I go, how many people do you think you fed? 500 million. I could tell you this, man. I don't think my whole bloodline has ever fed 500 million people. My whole bloodline, from the moment that God created them from dirt. I've started to realize if they're talking bad about you and they're trying to tear you down, there's something that they see in you that's irritating them. And I think we just have to take it a step further to realize what's the irritation. Is the irritation worth being valid over? I don't see Bryce doing anything besides waking up and thinking about Jesus. I pray he becomes a billionaire because we need more billionaires with that heart. So I want him to sell that beverage to every single person. But when I come with that heart position, it's easier to hear. But it's how you're packaging the question. Do you really need to be making money? Okay, but what did you ask him what he's doing with the money? Because if he's driving a Bugatti, smoking a cigar, and looking like Andrew Tate, then I'm like, all right, we got to figure this out. But I haven't seen that. And so, again, this just goes back to, am I wasting my time trying to figure out what another man is doing with the Lord? Or am I getting back to work and trying to do as much as I can? Not because I have to. It's because I get to.
Yeah, I think that's a really important message for people to hear. And it's often people with the lowest standards for themselves that have the highest expectations of others. And more importantly than that, it's the people that are offering the most to the world that get condemned the hardest when they fall short of that high standard they usually have, right? Which is such a shame. Yeah. It reminds me of being in class and the naughty kids at the back of the class that throw a bunch of rolled up paper at the teacher. Whenever they do one good thing, they're praised. And it's like, well done. But then when you sit there perfectly every single day listening, you're an astute student, you do one thing bad. The teacher's like, oh my God, I can't believe you do this, right? And you're just sat there like, what the hell? Why are these bad kids getting all the attention and all the praise? I'm like here giving my best every day. I think that's quite a nice illustration of how people hold these kind of public figures to account in the wrong way. There is still the question of heart posture, and we ignore the noise from others.
Yeah.
We look within. We are someone who's a Christian with a product. Are you honestly doing the most for the world? Could you be doing something else than making this product, than making content? If the answer is no, then I think you are fulfilling your kind of godly duties, for lack of a better word. But if it is driven by these lurking other worldly desires, then I think that is a problem. And I have seen that spill out. And again, this is me just condemning others whilst not focusing on my own shit. But I do feel like I have seen different people on social media where it's more about the post than the action. It's more about the outcome of people seeing that you're exploring Christianity rather than embodying it. And that does worry me. And it feels like the next logical step from that is people get audience captured. They see that something works and they keep on nailing it. And it might be content about Jesus. The rest of their life, they're not thinking about Jesus. They're just making content about him because it works. And you get audience captured and you get pushed into this bubble where you can't go, hey guys, today I'm really not feeling this whole Jesus thing.
Yeah.
I don't really believe today. You have to kind of put on this facade of being this perfect believer at all times. When actually I think the more powerful thing to do would be to lean into that doubt and showcase it because everyone goes through it.
I think a true man after God's heart would, so the way you're positioning it is he's the main character. I think a true man after God's heart realizes that he's not the main character. That he's just the unfolding of what the main character let happen. So when it's so self-driven, if you're the center of your universe, then your bad days are really bad and your high days are really high. But if I, for example, again, I'm not in ministry, I just talk about Jesus a lot, but if I went on a podcast, I think the most successful clips of me was just being brutally honest of how I was feeling and being low and down. I think that's more relatable. I think people could be like, wow, that guy believes in Jesus and is having a hard time. Okay, well, let me give it a swing. I think the ones who have a mask on, that's their own issues. But that doesn't mean God can't use them. For example, a guy getting up and giving a word of God because he wants praise, but he's still giving the word of God. So the man who hears it is still receiving what he needs to receive. That's why, like, if I could tell this generation anything, I would say that the outside world has no effect to you. That the gospel says that I have overcome the world. So if you truly didn't want the impact of it, and if you focus on Jesus, you could overcome it. You could be in a place that you shouldn't be and stand there greatly, and that others will look at you and be like, how is this man smiling? How is this man at so much peace? That's when I've brought more people to Jesus than me standing and waving from my hill of excellency. When people see a real man struggling but come out alive with a smile on his face, that's worth following more than the man who's perfect.
Yeah. And I think within that, if we keep on pursuing this line of inquiry here, there is something to be said about the heart and the purity of someone's heart. What are their intentions? Where does their heart truly lie? Something that I've been thinking about recently is I almost find it more impressive when I meet atheists. Alex O'Connor, I don't know if you know who that is. He's a big atheist debater. He's, pardon?
You guys sound the same.
That's incredibly racist,
Yeah,
but
I'm joking. I love how you said I know. It was London, right? It's London. I'm trying to take a stab at it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My bad.
Oh God, he's a good friend of mine, and him, another guy, Joe Foley, who's another kind of agnostic debater. They're two of the nicest people I've ever met.
Yeah,
they have this glow radiating off of them a lot of the time, and like anyone, they'll kind of have struggles, but they do have this glow the way they show up in front of me a lot of the time. And I look at them, they don't have any reason to be a moral person. If they are or were atheists, now they're kind of more agnostic. Actually, they have every reason to just exploit people because it's survival of the fittest, there's no God, so I make up the rules. But they don't. It almost weirdly feels like that's someone who's purer of heart than the Christian that does stuff not out of love, but out of obedience. They hear the word, they hear the preacher getting up on stage, and they obey. That feels less organic to me, and it actually feels like it's less pure of heart than the atheist that has no reason to be good to someone, but they do it anyway. I had Cliffe and Knechtle on the show a couple of months back, and Cliffe was talking to me about this, and I don't want to misinterpret him at all, but a comparison that he made that was useful was, without God, we all have the moral worth of a slug, or something along those lines.
Yeah, who's good but God?
But still, it feels as though that's kind of him. And I need to be really careful here that I don't misconstrue his words, but it feels like there's a danger, at least, with that interpretation, that you start kind of treating others like they're made in the image of God, just because you're obeying, not because you inherently feel it. And I don't know if this is making sense, but it feels like that atheist who just acts off their own volition, when they choose to be polite to you and be loving, it almost feels more pure.
Amen. So The question is it more loving for a man that has no reasons to be loving, that is loving, rather than a man who's told to be loving when he doesn't want to be loving, but he is loving? That's a fair question. But my question to you is, do you think that being nice is what gets you to heaven?
No.
What do you think is the reason why a man goes to heaven?
I think it's all down to his heart and whether he walks alongside Jesus and his teachings.
When Jesus said it's finished, I'm going to try to explain such a thick level of spirituality in such a minimal way. We racked up debt. All of us. Alex, me, you. Now we're all going and posturing to be kind, posturing to wake up and be at a level of excellence that we ponder in our heart to be excellent. But have you ever seen like 3 wildcats in the street and you're like, these are filthy animals, bro. They're just filthy animals. And so we sit amongst ourselves pondering who is less filthy when all of us are just a mess. And now this perfect God comes and says, hey, I've made you guys all clean off of my actions, not of yours. Now, I don't know what inspires Alex to get up every day. Mine isn't getting up because I'm obedient to the Lord because I have to be obedient to the Lord. I do it because I love him. I don't do it because I have to. I think if you do it because you have to, that's not a real relationship. And I think that it's the same as Alex doing it. Because if he's doing it for a reason of whatever he believes that is for him, then you guys are just sitting being your own gods and evaluating what is right and wrong. Adam and Eve did that. And so what I do is I don't posture myself to say, what's Alex doing? What's you doing? What I'm doing? I go to the holiness of God and I said, what is it your standards are at? And so when he washes me and me, Alex, and you are sitting at the table now, we're all equal. It has nothing to do with our works. It has to do about his works. So I'd rather not sit with my friends and measure our works. I'd rather point them to the finished work of the cross. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
But I do understand your heart position. And I think this is why a lot of Christians turn away from God, is because there's a lot of hypocrisy. And I just want to make it very sad that there's only one place in the gospel where God whips people and gets angry. It's hypocrites in the church. It's the ones who claim the mask of God, but are wolves in sheep's clothing. And woe to them. Woe to them. It is better to tie an anchor to them and throw them into the abyss of the sea than for them when they kneel in front of the feet of the Lord and they took people away from him. All because of them claiming that they were with him. Bro, it's a really bad way of going down. Me and you have spent time together. I have now the right to sit and gossip about you. What a shame would it be if I mispostured your heart? And there's nothing you could do about it. And now other strangers look at you like an abomination. They'll never follow you. They'll never listen to your podcast. Killing a man's character is death in God's eyes. And so I do apologize for Christians that act like Satan but claim that they are. But you know why I don't get too mad at them? Because I do that all the time. I did that to Logan Paul. When I stood in front of the whole media and I said, oh, he doesn't pay me anything. For that second, he's like, Jesus Christ, bro, look at all these stuff. And you're saying you're Christian? I put Jesus' face on, but his actions didn't resemble. Woe is to him who says that he acts like Jesus and he is with Jesus, but does not act like him. So I do believe it. I just believe that they're actually, both of those guys that you just put, the Alex and the man who claims that he's with Jesus, they both serve their own gods and it's themselves. So I think they're in the same room, but they just think that they're not in the same room.
I couldn't have asked for a better answer there. I find it interesting, this evolution on Christian content now. It's given a lot of people the chance to explore something that they wouldn't have otherwise explored. I told you that I'm from Brighton, which was the most atheist part in the UK and still is, where religion wasn't even a question. It wasn't even an open book. It was a closed one. I like that there's been a slight detachment from the church, the way that Christianity is discussed now, as kind of a concept. It's explored in a deep manner in extended podcasts, and it gives people the opportunity in a low stakes way to just press play on a video rather than having to rock up to church, even though that is still a low bar to jump over. If someone is kind of curious, they're able to check it out. And I guess the balance there is, it's great that there's this detachment from the church in some ways, so it makes it more accessible to people that were otherwise skeptical and wouldn't have even gone to church. But then at the same time, there are a lot of people I see, especially spiritual gurus. It feels as though they appropriate a lot of Christian values, a lot of talk about God, but they implement it into their life where it best fits them. It's Christian-ish values, right? Where they're in Bali and they still do drugs and stuff that would be looked down upon in the Bible, but they pick and choose parts. And I wonder how that's going to evolve. I don't have an answer for it, but
I think it's already involved. I think it's been like this. I think that, okay, let me give you an example. I've been on Impulsive. I've been, thank God, successful in my own lane. I did my own tour. I've had my own facet of fame. Do you know which fame I find the hardest to hold? Is when people look at you as a godly man. They treat you, and it breaks my heart, bro. The way that they treat me is like I'm more than a king, and I don't like it. It's too much. Like, it's like truly the way that when you see people that I've introduced to God and the way they cry, they will treat me, they will wash my feet, they'll take care of me, and I will try to reject it. You know why? Because there's too many people accepting it. There's too many people that are like, come sit at my table, man. Look how great I am. I'll push them off of me. I'll be like, bro, you're an idiot. You're looking at me like I'm your Messiah. I'm not your Messiah. I'm your massage. I make you feel good for a little bit, and then it's back to feeling like shit. You're not gonna get your life out of me. Now, people that take people out of the church and just give them like little baby medicines, those people are not after God's heart. They're after a desire to feel better. Go smoke a J then. If you want freedom, go to Jesus. Now, I'll tap into another side of it. But what about those people that are just in bed watching YouTube? Well, the gospel describes there's people that have milk and have meat. If a man is born in a house like where you're from, where there is no church around the corner, it's a blessing to be able to watch a YouTube video and to sit and eat at Jesus' table, because the church isn't an establishment. It's a group of people that believe in Jesus Christ. Your body now is the temple of God. So if you see it from that way, then you are a part of church. Now, if you're having milk at the house and it's time for you to have meat and the Holy Spirit says, arise, go to a church and start getting after it, it's your heart to see if I want this or I don't want this. But a man shouldn't stay alone and learn by himself. It's very wicked to do that. And I'll tell you why it's wicked. Because now, again, you're posturing what's good or bad. You don't get to say that going to church is okay for me or not okay for me. God says go to church. End all be all, doesn't matter. Go to church. 2 or more are gathered, I am present. Why? Because they're holding you accountable. If you're at church, in your mind, smoking weed in your house, listening to the word of the Lord, dog, maybe right now, if you're drinking milk, that's fine. Maybe you're a pothead and you know you got it. So you're sitting and you're learning. Good, come as you are. I love that. But if you know you have the wisdom to be like, maybe I should get dressed in front of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Maybe I should show some more respect. Again, it's just the posture of the heart. It's not your works. It's what God literally is measuring you on what you know. So the little Brit boy in his house watching a video because his mom and dad doesn't care to take him to church, I think God is standing on his throne clapping for him than the man who's in church more because he's like, look at me, I'm at church, I'm in the front row. I'm in the front row. You're in the back row. Oh, you're late? Demon. God's like, yeah, yo, you have no heart posture for me. It's all glory. A man is either worshiping himself or worshiping Jesus. I've been walking with Jesus for a long time, and you know what I realized? I run to worship myself. I run to worship myself. All I want to do is worship myself. Accidentally. It's part of my DNA. I was born Assyrian. I can't apologize for being Assyrian. I was born in this flesh of sin. And so it's just my due diligence and me and my work for me to just measure myself and be like, all right, dude, like we've been sitting here dealing with this for a bit. One I was dealing with publicly is I was sleeping with my girlfriend and people were like, hey, yo, there's no way you're doing these monologues and then closing the podcast and having sex with your girl. There's no way. There's no way. And in my brain, I kept giving myself like, well, we already did it. And like, she's already living, man. We already became one. And then so I'm starting, because I'm in my own house, I'm starting to give myself reasons and twisting scripture around to fit my needs. But do you think you're going to be able to do that in a room full of extremely sharp swords of the word of God? They'd be like, what? Dude, that's why I had a small wedding. I was like, I just got my dream house. And I'm like, I'm going to walk into this house that I don't deserve, unwed, and slept with my wife in this house. I'd rather die. So I said, we're getting married in this house before we go and sleep in this room.
Well, tell me more about your
Oh, yo, this guy's amazing. This guy's amazing. It's you're a magician, dude. Oh, dude, I suck at podcasting. Huh? I'm a terrible host. Oh my, imagine you see me in my next one. All right, tell me about this. You're like, are you stealing my work, dude? That's so funny. The greatest day of my life, dude. So I grew up in a church, and you know, a lot of people are telling me right or wrong or what I'm doing. And all I know is, hey man, I'm just going to look at this gospel. And I know in my heart, in the church that I was raised in, they would look down at me sleeping with my girlfriend before getting married. And the church that I'm a part of now, they would still be. So I just, dude, and by the way, I'm an Assyrian man, dude. Do you have any idea how many relatives I lost because of this? Because I didn't invite people, because I was like, I got to get married now. So I was like, I'm just going to do a small wedding. I lost so many friends and so many family members because of this. But I smile every day. Can I tell you something that means a lot to me?
Please.
That nobody will know about this? And I'm going to try my best not to cry about this. But this man, I've cried in front of him on a podcast so many times. This man, like, the word end of my rope couldn't be used better, man. Like, before I met him, I used to beg God to take my life because I couldn't kill myself. I knew it wasn't the right posture, but I had so many times I would go to bed crying and broken and so confused and so scared. And then somebody was like, bro, you don't know God. You got to read his words, man. You're just too full of yourself. And so I started reading the Bible and I started realizing what's going on. And this man right here, I would call him in the middle of the night crying. What do you think about this verse? What do you think about this? And he would not just listen to me, man. He would listen to me for so long, and then he would pray over me. And in his mind, it's just like, it's so normal to him. David is here, my best friend, and this man changed my life when he managed me. And my meet and greets are like 4 hours long, dude. And I get in so much trouble because I sit there with them and they're crying and they're telling me. And it's only because I see me, but I'm in the position now of Cliffe, and I take it so seriously. But I drag Cliffe from his beautiful home, drag him last minute. I go, dude, you got to marry me. Like, I don't want anybody marry me besides you. And I want your son to give some words. But before that, my mom was like, okay and not okay with the wedding, you know, because there's this thing called darga, and the Syrian church has a certain way, and my mom is very adamant about it. And I already said yes and no to certain things, and I'm not even fully certain, you know, I'm learning and I'm growing. I'm making honest moves. And I told her, I said, if I understand what Abraham felt like when God says, take your son and go sacrifice him. I go, because you used to tuck me into bed and say, I love you more than anything besides God, and make me recite that back to her. And I told her, I was like, Mom, I'm choosing God now. I have to try to figure this out. I could be wrong. And I pray that if I'm wrong, he breaks me in front of the whole world and nobody has to make that same mistake. But he knows what I'm weighing in my heart. I at least have to try. And then the last thing she said to me, she's like, but Kave's your best man, right? And I said, yeah. She goes, he can't be your best man. It's like, Mom, that's my best friend. That is the only friend that I've had growing up. He's my brother. I would truly die for that man. What are you talking about? And she goes, our church or not our church, your best man is supposed to hold you and your wife accountable to the Lord. How can he do that if he doesn't honor the Lord? Now, mind you, my best friend, dog, I had to pray so long when I was around him because I would be praying it in and out because I always pray over my meal, right? I'm praying over my meal, and this son of a gun's in my ear. Oh, I give you my blessings, child. Like a full demon, bro. And I'm like, yo, you can't do that. You can't do that, bro. And now I have to pray longer to ask you for forgiveness because of him. And so like, I'm just sitting there and I laugh. And he was just such a pagan, just a guy who's just like, and by the way, like he loved me. But if you ever crossed him, it felt like I had a pit bull. Where I'm like, oh, great, now you just pissed Kaveh off, and now he's gonna kill you. Like, way to go. And for a wedding gift, you know, people give you gifts when you get married, and God gave me. I do feel it's because I was trying to choose him. He gave me the greatest wedding gift. So I sit my friend down and I said, hey man, like, I've argued with my mom about a lot of things. I go, but if I'm going to stand up to my mom about the Lord, I have to stand up to you as well. Like, you can't be my best man. And he says, why? I said, because the best man has accepted Jesus Christ in his heart and will hold me accountable to make sure I'm treating my wife like my church. And you just don't look at these things the way that I'm thinking. And he pulled out a Bible and he said, God has been knocking on my heart. And he goes, if there is a God, he goes, I believe that my God is Jesus Christ. And I looked at him and my whole life just like, I'm just going, I'm doing flip spiritual. I'm like, dude, and I look at him, I'm like, listen, you crackhead. I go, if you're pretending to love Jesus Christ, to be my best man, I'm gonna lose my mind. You're just send us both to hell, dude. You can't do that. And he shows me his Bible and where he's reading it and he's taking it seriously. And he's like, I know this might not be the best time to ask you. He goes, but I want to get baptized. And showed Cliffe before I got married in my pool, he baptizes my best friend, right? And so I get excited. I'm like, yo, I want to get baptized because I got baptized as a baby and this has been on my heart. I'm like, yo, I want to get baptized. Like, I want to get baptized. I'm like, oh my God, me and my best friend are going to be baptized. And so we're in the water and my eyewitnesses is my father and my father-in-law. And he's looking at my best friend and he's asking him the questions before baptism. And right before he goes underwater, God like touches my mind and shows me every prayer that I've had of. And I said, Lord, I want him to go into the kingdom before me. Like, I want him to show me around. And he hits the body of water first. And then Cliffe grabs me and I'm already just gone, bro. And my wife's in his house. And he just baptizes me. And I just realize, I go, oh my God, my gift that the Lord gave to me was my prayers for 15 years of my best friend getting baptized. And you know how crazy it is to sit with him till this day and discuss it? Like, bro, I can't, like, you know, and that's what gives me hope about Logan, dude. Like, I never believed that I would ever sit and have these conversations. Bro, it's been years. And when he talks to me, he brings me up Jesus and he talks about this, I start crying. And I'm like, bro, you're talking to me about God. One time he was praying with his meal and I whispered in his ear. And I leaned in, I said, gotcha. Yeah, so that was and how hot is this woman, bro? Like, if people don't believe God exists, look at me and look at my wife, dog. Look at me and look at my wife, bro. I have this joke. I said, well, God, when I want this. I want when people look at me, I want them to undeniably know that you exist. He goes, fine, I'll give you your wife. No one's going to believe you got her without me. How many more of these, bro, do you have? I can't take this anymore, bro. I feel like this is insane, dude.
Well, let's stay on this one for a little bit. What's been the biggest struggle for you being married?
dude, it's funny you say that. It's been more of a blessing than it's been a struggle. I think this world that we live in make it seems like a marriage is a lot more struggle, but it's not. It's so much more blessings. If you're having struggles in it, I say hold tight to the ship and buckle in because you're about to receive a great blessing. But I think the greatest learning curve I've had is when I met Belle, she didn't know who Jesus was, but she acted more like Christ. And I knew who Jesus was, and I acted more like Satan. And through her, I would like to say obedience, like her meekness, her love, it only held a mirror to me to see my hypocrisy. And then when I got married, and you have these moments where you're short and you're like, yo, is this person retarded? I asked you 1,000 times. And then I go to God and then I deal with something with him 1,000 times. And he goes, did I call you stupid when you said that? Or did I love you? And he goes, why are you not treating your wife with the same grace that I'm treating you? And so it challenges me to love my wife like Christ loved the church. And Jesus died for the church. So every day in a good marriage, I die more to myself for my wife. It was way easier because this is the best way I could put it. I didn't care about myself. And I think a lot of people in this day and age, they're like, oh, once you care about yourself, if you don't care about yourself, you do care about yourself, it kind of comes and goes. But if you have something greater to care about, it carries you through that. And he gave me a little bit more of his love through my wife and until I attached fully onto him. And then now when I fully attached onto him, it was my duties to act like a good husband, not talk like a good husband. That's why I don't like to make seminars or teach people to be like me because I'm running away from me. I'm not trying to be like me. Why would I try to sell you on a program to be like me when I'm trying to murder myself every single day I wake up? And being in a marriage, dude, in Proverbs, there's a king that writes in the gospel, and it's the book of Proverbs, and it's about wisdom. And he says that basically that a wife is worth way more than rubies and gold, and it's truly the crown on a man's head. I could live in a box if this woman is in it. A mansion without her is hell. And I pray that every man gets to stand across a good woman that, like, when Adam removed his rib to bring out Eve, I understand God looking at us as one. Her mistakes are my mistakes. My mistakes is her mistakes. It breaks my heart when I see a marriage separate. And you know where they start it? You know where the mustard seed is that grows? It's a bank. They start with their money. In my mind, it's not their money, it's their God. At what point does a Dollar Tree become idolatry? At what point? It's when your life changes off of it. My money is her money. In fact, I tell her all the time, I was like, bro, I don't even care about money. I literally only have this to have you. Like, and she starts laughing. So I truly think that a blessing in this day and age, they try to paint it like, you know how many people came up to me like, bro, you're so young. Go get it out of your sister first, then get married. Do you know I mourn that I'm like, I look at these kids that are 21 getting married, and I'm like, 10 years with my wife, bro, at this age. Having a younger kid. Back in the day, the fruits of your labor were your children. Your children. When you're older, it's the abundance of your children that takes care of you. If you have 6 men, Jesus Christ, you have an army. This guy's worried about your future. This guy's worried about your medical. This guy will be worried about your housing. Now you have a blessing. You could sit back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Bro, this generation is not going to have anything. They're going to have iPads and robots taking care of them. But they wanted this. Why? Because they chose themselves first and not Jesus. If Jesus didn't want us to be fruitful or multiply, then I would say, okay, there's this curse behind it. But if he said be fruitful and multiply, it's better for us. Listen, the Bible to me isn't what everybody else sees the Bible as. It's like, oh, I have to worship him. To me, it's like, what a generous book I have to be a better man on this earth. Like, it's a cheat code. There's a song that says the Bible is basic instructions before leaving earth. And I could not agree more. When I read Proverbs, I went into there reading that the wise man is not me. I'm the fool. When I read the fool, I had more in common with the fool. And I was like, oh, this is not great. And from there, I tried to step towards what the gospel says a wise man should be like. And by the way, remember when you were like, isn't it wrong for a man to do something to be obedient? But we're forgetting we're all broken men. So is it wrong that a broken man wants to be healed?
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
I think part of it as well, this real lack of relationships in my generation, it's because it's much harder to quantify love. In fact, you can't. That's the whole point, right? Whereas you can calculate your body count. You can give the girls that you slept with a score on the attractive scale out of 10. And it's a shortcut to pleasure. Doing those things, it makes you instantly aware of how much you're thriving when actually you have this deeper hole that's yet to be filled inside of you, even if you are filling loads of holes outside of that. And my experience, I've been with my girlfriend for like 3 months now, which is not a long time. Maybe by Gen Z standards, it's basically married.
Yeah.
But it's my first relationship in adulthood.
Mhm.
And everything I get from it is so beyond words. It's crazy. Like I try and I speak about her nonstop, and it's maybe a little bit weird at times because I'm just obsessed. But the words don't do it justice. But there's also this element of sacrifice that I think you have to buy into and feel, that's very hard to give as instructions to young people. Hey, by the way, you have to do these things, and as a result, you'll feel fulfilled over the course of your lifetime. That's like, it doesn't really make sense until you experience it. And, I hope that we'll be together the rest of my life, and I'm ready for that because I've kind of seen the alternative. I've dabbled. I don't have a huge body count, but like I enjoyed growing up, my adolescence, and I thought that was kind of a measure of my worth. Whereas now I see, as you said, like, oh, I could have had more time with my wife. And it reminds me of something I was talking about with Davidge on his podcast, Davidge's Den, the other day. And it's the words of a Christian thinker called Thomas Aquinas. He's a famous theologian, and he did a lot of work around Aristotle. Aristotle was initially condemned by the church as a bit of a heretic. He was long before Christianity.
Yeah, because the shape of the sun and the moon and everything.
And the fact that the universe was circular in existence, there wasn't a beginning like in Genesis. He was around, I think, about 384 before Christ. So they later on tried to adopt his thinking, but they couldn't really make it fit within the Christian theology. So instead they said, no, be gone with Aristotle. And Thomas Aquinas was the first person to try and actually understand Aristotle's thoughts, because he was a big thought leader, and put them into the Christian theology, and he was pretty successful with it. And he was born in 1225. In 1273, he went to church one day. He was Catholic. He had some sort of encounter with God. He never went into details. No one knows quite what it was, but he had some sort of physical encounter that he felt. And at that point, Aquinas had written over 8.5 million words about God, about Jesus, about theology, about Aristotle. And he goes to one of the people close to him and he says, everything I've written up until this moment feels like straw compared to what I felt. And he died within a year. And in that period, he didn't publish any more writing. He felt it was redundant compared to what he had felt. And the important thing is, he didn't tell anyone to burn his books. He didn't say that it was the opposite to what he now felt. Maybe it was helpful. But compared to what he felt, compared to what he experienced, the words were just like straw. And I think love is probably the best gateway to that feeling. And I wish that more kids in my generation got a chance to experience that.
I think this generation they're taught you have to work for it, right? I don't think that's true. When God says that we are made in the image of God, he created things by speaking. So if you wanted that feeling, the gospel says all you have to do is ask. He's a gentleman. He's just knocking on your door. He's not going to intrude. The demons are the ones climbing through your windows, through your balconies, do all that stuff without asking you. But he's a gentleman. Once you ask him, what did Aristotle feel? What is actually Jesus? Who is this man? Dude, You've had conversations with great people, right? Have you ever sat down with Jesus at the level that you sat down with your interviews? Because I promise you, every time you walk away from this interview, you're going to be like, man, I got something from this. But you're talking to piles of dirt with a heartbeat and the borrowed lungs and air of the Creator. Imagine what you would feel. Dude, Aristotle, we don't know what he felt, but I could promise you that if you call out to our Christ, if you go, Jesus, I'm talking, and you can even be honest. In fact, I would like to share this Bible verse. There was one man who got his blessings done like that. Blind guy waited an hour. Crippled guy took some time. But there was one guy, immediately the gospel says, and that guy asked Jesus, I don't believe. Could you help me believe? Bro, let's break that down. God says that the door between you and I is faith. And that man said, could you get the door for me? Could you open that door for me? I can't do it on my own. That's why when I sit around and I talk to intelligent people like Dr. Jordan Peterson, and they're using their wisdom to climb to the level of Jesus Christ, they will always reach for nothing. Because then you would be able to say that it was your wisdom that got you to see Jesus Christ. When it's not, then it would be your works. But it's very clearly written that it's not about our works, that it's a gift. Have you ever worked for a gift? Never. It would be weird. It would be compensation if it was. The love that you have that you can't even fathom to count, you'll feel it. And all you got to do is ask for it. That's it. There's no secret sauce. There's no working. There's no, I got to do this and I got to be that. Jesus literally says, come as you are. There's some people that are on full-blown crack, but they get to meet Jesus because in their moment, their heart reached out to him and he reaches back. Because you got to remember, bro, he doesn't look at you like a creation. He looks at you like you're his child. That's hard to believe in a civilization that they're telling you that children are nonsense and a waste of time. Of course, your heart is going to be hardened. We don't even know how to. Why do you think the devil comes after love? Because Jesus is love. If you don't understand love, you won't understand Jesus. That's why what we love here is not what we love there. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
I feel like I'm speaking in haikus. I don't even know what a haiku is. Did I say that right?
Well, what I was going to say actually is I think that's the perfect note to end on because that made a lot of sense to me and it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time and I've really enjoyed this.
This is by far my favorite interview, dude. Like you're really good. You could tell that you're very passionate about this, and I'm super grateful that you even thought about me as somebody you wanted to interview, and I cannot wait to see where you go with your journey of interviewing people.
Thank you, sir.
But promise me one thing: interview God one night. Come there with your hardest questions. Come there with pictures. Be like, who's this guy on the cross? How do you feel about it? And I think that you will have something that I could never work for to give to you. Thanks for having me, man.
George Janko, ladies and gentlemen.
It was a pleasure, bro.